And here we go. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unit 1 for the National Invitational. We have Faith Lutheran Middle and High School from Nevada here with us today. My name is Christine Hull, and I will be your facilitator today. In a moment, I will have the judges introduce themselves, followed by the students, and then we will begin the hearing. Students will deliver a 4-minute prepared statement, followed by 8 minutes of judge questions. My microphone will be muted during the hearing, and I will hold up the time and 1-minute signs. The students have been spotlighted, but I also suggest that everyone go to gallery view rather than speaker view so that we can see everybody who's on the panel. At the conclusion of the hearing, judges will give brief feedback to the team, and then we will conclude. Judges, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to introduce myself. The other judges will introduce themselves. We would ask that you then introduce yourself, students, and your teacher, and then I will give you the most important information from your perspective, which is which question we're doing. So my name is Alan Brodman. I am recently retired as a high school teacher from East Brunswick, New Jersey. My teams competed at the national competition, and I had some wonderful students who were able to win some national championships. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Hello, my name is Tim Moore. I'm from the Center for the Study of the American Constitution at the University of Wisconsin. It's great to be here.
And my name is Glyptis Ann Grider-Jones. I'm with the University of Louisville's McConnell Center. And you are?
Hi, my name is Isabel Alabi, and I'm an 8th grader at Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School.
Hi, my name is Sienna Lopez, and I'm an 8th grader at Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School.
Hi, I'm Isabella Franzi, and I'm an 8th grader at Faith Middle School and High School.
Hi, I'm Gracie O'Shaughnessy. I'm an 8th grader at Faith Lutheran Middle School and High School, and we're here with our teacher, Mrs. Carroll, and our principal, Mrs. Harper.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So now the question. You will be doing question number 1. Okay, and I will read the question and then you can begin. What is a constitution and a constitutional government? What is Republican government? How can constitutional government be organized to prevent the abuse of power and protect natural rights? How can higher or fundamental law be distinguished from statutory or ordinary law that governments regularly create and enforce? You may begin.
George Washington once said, "The Constitution is a guide which I will never abandon." Our Constitution is a legal framework for government that decides how it should be organized. Our Constitution has a set of amendments that protects our rights as citizens that the government must acknowledge. For instance, in the court case Gideon versus Wainwright, Clarence Gideon was charged in a Florida state court with a felony and was sentenced 5 years in prison. He was not given a lawyer, directly violating his 6th Amendment. Although he was guilty, this case was taken to the Supreme Court and the court sided with him.
Although most of the Constitution was written and established during the Constitutional Convention of 1787, it can still be changed today. During the recent 2020 election, both President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris continuously expressed their support of the Equal Rights Amendment, leading many people to believe that it will finally be ratified. This is extremely important because having a constitutional government means that we are governed by the set of rules and amendments that we put in place. If these are kept up to date and consistent with what the people want, it is no longer fair or relevant to the citizens of our country.
George Washington once said, "In a free and republican government, you cannot restrain the voice of the multitude." In a republican government, citizens derive their power from the rules of the Constitution. They elect representatives that they entrust their power into to serve their opinions and promote the common good. When people aren't asked for their opinions on things, it can cause animosity.
When the citizens elect government officials, they are forfeiting their right to certain freedoms with the understanding that the people they elect will protect their rights. In the case Luther versus Gordon, the rights of the citizens of Rhode Island were not protected. Rhode Island was still under archaic government instated before the Revolutionary War, which limited the right to vote. People held a convention to create a new constitution and elect a governor of Rhode Island, but the archaic government put a stop to this. Republican government is very beneficial, but only if it is used properly.
There are many ways that a constitutional government can be organized to prevent the abuse of power and protect natural rights. Our Constitution separates power by having the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. In front of this paper number 51, James Madison talks about how we need separation of power. John Locke believed that all people have the right to these privileges and introduced in natural rights as life, liberty, and property. A more recent event is the ongoing crisis of racism and police brutality. Millions of people face racism, making them feel like they aren't getting these rights. Since 2015, there has been at least 135 unarmed Black women and men killed by the police force, depriving them of the rights they automatically get when they are born.
The Constitution has multiple amendments and official rules in place to ensure that true abuse of power is nearly impossible in American government. In the court case Alvarez versus United States, Xavier Alvarez was fined and given probation after falsely claiming that he was a retired U.S. Marine who had received the Congressional Medal of Honor. The court argued that he violated the Stolen Valor Act, which made it a federal crime to fraudulently claim to be a recipient of certain military decorations for tangible benefit. Alvarez then stated that this violated his right to free speech, further causing the act to be redacted. Being able to challenge and correct the Constitution is not only essential for our country, but extremely helpful to keep our government and its procedures honest and reliable.
Higher law is a set of laws that establishes and places limits on the powers of government. They help ensure the protection of people's fundamental rights and are difficult to change, whereas ordinary laws can be created often and altered. Higher law rules over everyone no matter what. The 14th Amendment guarantees that all citizens have equal protection under the Constitution. This, alongside higher law, is what keeps our rights secure.
The U.S. Constitution has made it very clear that it is the supreme law of the land and overpowers any other law. After the Civil War, many Southern states had tried to deny Black people basic freedoms. They passed the Black Codes, which prohibited Black people from voting and forced them to enlist into a yearly labor contract, refusal meaning being arrested, fined, or put into unpaid labor. These Black Codes would not fly for many reasons today, one of the more significant ones being an executive order President Joe Biden passed on March 7, 2021. The executive order promoted access to voting, a stark difference from the Black Code. To conclude, higher law is very beneficial and rectifies abuse of power and unfair laws. We are now ready for questions.
Okay. I want to ask you about a concept you didn't specifically mention, but you did in terms of some of the ideas you laid out, and that's the idea of limited government. That government cannot have whatever power it wants, it can't be absolute. Okay, and that is part of our Constitution and part of what one could argue is an appropriate Constitution. What I'd like you to do is to evaluate how good of a job have we done in our society at providing for this idea of limited government. And if you'd like, you may go ahead and give a grade to how history has moved forward in this concept, just like your teacher might grade you for a paper. So, thank you.
Well, I would like to grade America with a B. As we saw in the Constitutional Convention of 1787, the founders actually worked very hard after the fresh wounds they felt from the Revolutionary War to make sure that government was limited and didn't abuse their power. There were anti-federalists and federalists who were both arguing on both sides. Should we have a strong national government and weak and local state governments, or should we have a weak national government and stronger state and local governments? And eventually they came to the conclusion that there should be a stronger national government, as we see with the higher law that proceeds over today. And I think that was a good decision because, as I mentioned in my speech, these states had passed many racist laws that discriminated against Black people, like the Jim Crow laws. And if without higher law, without higher law, it would have created a place of division and fear in America that, yes, we do have issues today. It's not the same as it was a couple years ago. So I think that while the states had issues with what they were passing, and that's why I did not give them an A, because they should not have passed the Jim Crow laws in the first place, I think that America has still done a very good job.
In my opinion, I believe that America as a whole should receive around an A- because we have grown a lot from our past with the slavery and different amendments such as the 14th Amendment protecting all races and genders from like disadvantages, and just everyone has protection under the Constitution. And I feel that we do have a pretty good job of keeping everyone under control, such as like Joe Biden. Some people may disagree that he has been abusing his power with all of the executive orders that he's been putting in place and passing. But in my opinion, I believe that that is his job, and he is simply just protecting Americans how he believes they should be protected. An example of Americans being protected is the Fisher versus University of Texas court case, where a woman named Abigail Fisher said that the Texas College campus was being racist towards her because she was a white woman and they wouldn't let her in because they wanted diversity on the campus. Well, the court ruled that in favor of the college, saying that under the equal protection of the 14th Amendment, they were allowed to deny her for wanting diversity on the campus.
Let's talk a little bit about unwritten constitutions. Do you think they could function effectively as higher law?
I believe that unwritten constitutions would not function effectively as higher law, because the issue is the clarity of what rules really should be in place and how they should be enforced. It is a bit of a gray area on what you decide that the law should be enforced and how you want to proceed with that by a case-to-case basis.
I have to slightly disagree with my colleague, because us as Americans, even we have some gray areas in our Constitution, such as the 9th Amendment, which states that all laws that are not listed in the Constitution are given to the people, which I think is a good law, and it doesn't hold us down to certain restrictions and boundaries, so we can have a little bit more freedom in the country.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask your opinion. Some people say that the United States is both a republic and a democracy. So in your opinion, do you agree with that statement? Is it accurate? And explain why or why not.
I would disagree with that statement, because I think we have a Republican government, because in our government, we as citizens elect representatives to go into government and voice our opinions for us. And that's like the whole definition of our Republican government. And that is what we do in our government.
Are we democratic?
And if so, explain how or why.
Yes, we are democratic in America because we have systems in place where the people do have a voice in what goes on in government, like with what we saw with the Electoral College. It is a democracy that we do have in America. So with that, I'd like to slightly disagree with Bella and say that we do have a Republican and democracy in America.
How about long constitutions? I mean, previously you mentioned that clarity, unwritten constitutions might not be real clear. So let me push you on that. Do long constitutions provide more clarity than short constitutions?
I personally believe that long constitutions do provide more clarity than short constitutions, because it gives a deeper aspect as to what the people who are establishing the Constitution truly mean, and these maybe amendments or laws that they're putting in place. It gives a bit more of the perspective and maybe the idea of how these could be used in a real life situation.
I have to slightly disagree with my colleague here, because I feel like us in America, we don't have a fully long constitution, and so we have some freedoms in our country, as I had stated earlier, and I believe that's good. But also, as we've seen now with the whole COVID-19 pandemic, us as humans have lots of different opinions, and our opinions differentiate from each other's. So for example, the mask mandate, some people may believe that that's good and that it's helping the common good and the safety of our country for their health, but other people believe that it is violating their rights as Americans and that they shouldn't be forced to wear one if they need to.
I would agree with Gracie. A longer constitution gives more details on certain things that could happen. A longer constitution allows us to make right or wrong choices when it comes
Please
to
finish up.
certain.
Sorry, we have time. Please just finish your sentence.
It gives us more detail on what we need to do in certain situations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I'll have some follow-ups and some comments from the judges.
Glippy, you want to start?
Sure. I really appreciate the variety of examples you all use to illustrate historical and constitutional examples that you all use to illustrate your overall thesis. I especially enjoyed hearing that matched with contemporary examples, things from just last month, or examples from just, earlier this year. I think that as you continue moving forward, always make it a point to, when you have an example, link it back directly to how that answers the overall question. Again, you all have the examples you're pulling from, and there's clear reference. I especially liked when you explained the court cases. But again, that final piece, I think, always going back and making sure that you're linking it directly to how that answers the overall question. But again, the ease with which you all use those examples was very evident, and the comfort with which you did that was very enjoyable to see. So I really appreciate the effort and time and energy you all put into preparing your remarks. So thank you.
Yeah, I thought your case law was pretty solid, and frankly, the fact that you go to the Luther Borden case, as I would consider it to be the fundamentally important case when you want to study the meaning of the guarantee clause. I mean, a tremendous example of how we've tried to sort that out. What is Republican government mean in the states? So I thought that was particularly effective. I also thought your citation of Gideon as a in your opening statement, I thought was effective as well. I also appreciated your thinking about written and unwritten, and obviously, well, there's a lot of flexibility on unwritten, but we've got a Ninth Amendment. So I appreciate the fact that you're seeing how we have written, but there's a lot of gray area. And interestingly enough, very few judges want to touch the Ninth Amendment because that's a can of worms. But you're thinking about even written constitutions may have this problem as well. And also pointing out our Constitution doesn't address COVID. Is that, would a longer Constitution have done that? So I appreciate the fact you're seeing some nuances here in constitutionalism. So thank you for sharing with us.
I have to agree with a lot of what has been said. Particularly, I like the fact that you really tried to move in the responses to the questions. You used examples you hadn't used to a great extent in your opening, and I thought that was really very good. I would agree, just give me a little bit more. Make that linkage that was talked about, okay? Make it clear, okay, that you have made that complete link to the whole concept. But I thought on the whole, folks, a very, very nice job. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, another round of applause, and I'm going to stop the recording.